Happy 2025, everybody. Well, we've been talking already for quite a while here in our mastermind today, but we wanted to do a quick kind of like little seminar group discussion on just avoidant personalities and traits that you see in people who are avoidant, because it's such a common theme in the SP and law of assumption, law of attraction community. We were just saying how like all of us have these qualities that are kind of avoidant, but a lot of people with serious SP issues have it to higher levels, and you might recognize some of these qualities in yourself, and I almost guarantee you're going to recognize some of these qualities in others that you're close to. So yeah, we thought we would just kind of riff on that for a while. Guys, this is going to be very informal, so feel free to chime in at any time. I'm going to get the share screen going, and we're going to go from there. Hold on. You guys can see this?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so this is, yeah, again, chime in at any time, guys. This is because this is somewhat dry. This is our friend ChatGPT. Just giving us a quick but very helpful rundown. I thought about avoidant personalities. Avoidant personalities often exhibit specific behaviors and thought patterns when ending or rekindling a relationship. So right there, first of all, I want to say specific behaviors and thought patterns, okay? This has so much to do with law of assumption concepts and like what state you're in and what you're looping in your head. I think that should be clear to most people watching this recording, but I just want to make sure we point that out. These behaviors stem from their underlying fear of intimacy and tendency to prioritize independence over emotional closeness. Here's what you might observe. Again, that's a huge sentence. Here's what you might observe. When ending a relationship, there might be emotional detachment. They may withdraw emotionally before officially ending the relationship, creating distance as a defense mechanism. Conversations about the breakup might feel cold or lack emotional depth. They might use rationalization. They often justify the breakup with logical reasons rather than addressing emotional factors. Common explanations might include feeling trapped, needing space, or claiming incompatibility. There's an avoidance of conflict that they want often when it comes to ending a relationship when the person is avoidant. They may end the relationship in an indirect way, such as via text or ghosting to avoid confrontation. If confronted, they might minimize the significance of the relationship to downplay emotional intensity. There's a focus on independence. They may frame the breakup as a need for personal growth or independence, emphasizing their need for freedom. And 5, there's a quick rebound to routine. To cope with the breakup, they may dive into work, hobbies, or other activities that reinforce their self-reliance. So that's, general traits that are often seen when an avoidant personality is ending a relationship. We'll then go into when they want to rekindle a relationship. But were there any aha moments or things that really stuck out there? Marvin, why I sent this to you, I said we should do a video. It's like this shit. I'm like, holy cow.
Absolutely. I mean, even people I haven't worked with, like people that I just know.
Personally, exactly. This is, again, you're going to, once you know about this stuff, like you're going to be like, oh yeah, like they're avoidant. Like that's what's going on here, right? Like we see like on Reddit or YouTube or whatever, you'll see people being like, what's the problem? Like, did I just not live in the end? I didn't do sats right. And like literally 4 times out of 5, if not 9 times out of 10, the answer to their question is no, you are just avoidant. It's like one of these or several of these, they are like checking the box, like a stereotypical example of that. Like if you hear their story, you're like, no, like it's got nothing to do with techniques doing them right or wrong. It's your avoidance. And that often manifests itself in people not taking appropriate inspired action, like communicating with their SP when they should have, because they're afraid to be vulnerable. They're afraid to feel that fear. So yeah,
And
I thought, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, and this is probably one of the main, if not the main aspect that we hear from people is this avoidance, and not even you know what? I don't know what it is. It's the when I'm looking at this, I realize this goes hand in hand with the series that I'm doing and that we're doing. I want you on my next video to go over this, but the map of consciousness, people who are avoidant, they are in the survival paradigm of the map of consciousness, in my opinion. And they're avoidant because they're feeling either shame, guilt, apathy, grief, or fear about what they're dealing with. They're feeling one of those energetic logs, you know what I mean? One of those emotions. They're
Yes.
feeling one of those. And so it's showing up in the 3D as being avoidant. And it's no different than like, and this is the same thing, like for instance, people that we've dealt with in the past, some people that contact us and say, I want coaching. And then you don't hear back from them.
Exactly.
No more. It's like, and it's like, why don't you contact us back and follow up and follow through? Is it because you feel guilty? Again, this is guilt is one of those things on the map of consciousness. Do you feel guilty that you are really undecided and you can't and maybe you can't afford it and you feel shame, which is also on the map of consciousness. You feel shame, like I don't want to tell them I can't afford that. I'm embarrassed. You know, and so it's like when you read it, that makes me this you going over that what you just said, it just makes me think of all of the reasons, whether it's relationship, whether it's you avoid people in person. Because I noticed that too in real life. When people, if you notice, when people owe you money, they avoid you
Right.
because they know they owe you money. You know, it's like they don't want to run into you. And it's because again, on that paradigm of survival, you're feeling shame or guilt or whatever you're feeling, fear. What if I see this person again? Are they gonna hit me? Are they gonna be mad at me? Are they gonna forgive me because I took so long to give them I still haven't given them their money back and all of the above. So again, it's all of that stuff, but you got to realize a lot. That's just the mind playing tricks on you. You know, a lot of that stuff is ego. When you're operating on the survival paradigm, in my opinion, you're operating from ego in the worst way. You're not operating from ego in the best way, and that's what people who are avoidant are doing, in my opinion. Is they're operating so much on their ego, and they're afraid to be wrong or afraid of answers or whatever the case may be, and so they just avoid. So yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And it goes, I completely agree with you. It goes hand in hand with so much of what Hawkins talks about. Um, I think they're scared to be vulnerable and they resist feeling vulnerable, especially around another person a lot of the time. You know, it says here their underlying fear of intimacy. Because if I'm intimate, it means that I'm exposed, that I care, and I can be hurt, right? And I don't want, my ego doesn't want me to go there. It doesn't want me to grow in that way and to be open in that way. Um,
Especially if your ego's been damaged time after time after
exactly.
time.
And it's a learned behavior in many ways, you know, and that's the thing. And yeah, it's like setting themselves up in a shell. So it's prioritize independence over emotional closeness. Now, this is not a good sense of independence. This is a sense of independence from a place of fear and scarcity. Um, Marvin, honestly, I think another reason people like we talk to people on some of these calls, like, oh, I'll get back to you tomorrow, and we never hear from them. They ghost us, is because they speak to us and they realize, oh shit, I'm going to actually have to look at this. I'm going to have to be vulnerable. I'm going to have to look at
Right.
myself honestly and realize I'm not the golden goose I thought I was. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I wrote something the other day, like, you know, Neville in Fundamentals, which is this great, it's a short bulletin from 1953. He says, you know, I'm obviously paraphrasing, but like, we're very surprised when the person we hold so dear that we put on such a high mantle, basically it turns out that he's actually a piece of shit. he's talking about him, you know, ourselves, right? Like that is, it's like, oh my God, you know, we're thinking it was out here, my SP or this other person, but it's like, oh no, this was me that did this. So this is, I mean, yeah, this is a
And that's
fun
where the
video.
shame comes in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
This is
that's
a fun video. This
and
is
shame is at the very bottom of Hawkins' map. Shame is at the very bottom of Hawkins' map. And that's where that shame comes in, which then causes you to feel guilt. Which, if you stay in those two states long enough, that causes you to feel apathy. And apathy is that feeling that people have of it. Like, what did you say in was it in the rationalization part of this, Tim?
They
Yeah,
often justify the breakup with logical reasons rather than addressing the emotional factors. Common explanations might include feeling trapped, needing space, or
needing
claiming
space.
incompatibility.
Exactly, and that, to me, that's when that's the apathy, and apathy is third from the bottom on Hawkins consciousness, because when you hit the apathy stage, you start feeling hopeless. You're like, what's the point? I don't think this is worth it. We're incompatible. Oh, I just need space, and you kind of turn it. You don't care anymore, but that's just the story you're telling yourself. You actually do care, but you're telling yourself that story because, again, you're avoidant and you don't want to actually deal with what's really going on underneath the surface. And that's why, Tim and I always peel back the layers and tell people, no, you have to deal with what's underneath the surface, unless you're gonna, hypnotize yourself, maybe like a Kuwait, and try to get results that way. But that most people don't know how to do that. They don't know how to self-hypnotize themselves, and they're not gonna really
I still
impress that.
can't do it like Kue suggests. I have to do this shit. I have to do the Hawkins stuff. You know what I mean? Like that's my guy, Kue, and I still can't do it. It's very hard to do consistently for this shit, for this stuff.
But I would recommend it. I would recommend, in my opinion, honestly, people might not like it, but I recommend doing it Hawkins way,
Oh,
and
you got to. Most of
and
us
not
have
doing
to.
it Kuwait.
The
Yeah,
Kue way, exactly. I mean, this is the thing. We talk about this. Nobody else in the space talks about this, but like the Kue way, and which is the Neville way. The Neville way is the harder way for most people of the Kue way. As great as those ways are and amazing as results as those can get you, for I would say 90% plus of people, they're not going to get you the holistic long-term results of feeling better that the Hawkins way will get you. Because Hawkins is saying, you're not trying to manifest shit. You are just letting go of the resistance that is there. And it's there whether you want it to be or not, motherfucker. And you can try to hypnotize yourself via Kue or Neville to get rid of it for good. And Kue did have some case studies of helping people with severe anxiety, for instance, get rid of it. But most of Kue's effectiveness is like his great case studies when it came to mental stuff, issues like this, he couldn't engender long-term cures for people. While something like what Hawkins is talking about and doing deep shadow work, perhaps mixed with straight up therapy or something like IFS, I do think changes you long term much more effectively than Kue or Neville. Neville, I mean, people aren't going to like this, but just like, no, it's very hard to cure yourself from like this stuff via just sats and living in the end.
Sats will get you. Sats will get you something small or big potentially that you wanted, for whatever length of time period, but it's not guaranteed to make you keep that, and it's not guaranteed to make you be able to deal with that in the 3D once it comes, and all of that type of stuff. So that's what Sats is good to potentially get you something quickly, but Sats, in my opinion, does not help people with keeping anything once they get it. That's the difference between Sats, in my opinion.
That's a fucking great point. Sats is great at getting you to get something, but to keep it, you need, generally speaking, you need to do something like this. You need to let go. You need to feel the feeling. You, instead of resisting feeling the feeling, you have to let go and say, I'm going to feel the feeling in some way. Oh, this is a good video. Shit, I'm glad we did this one, guys. And Marv, I mentioned this, I was texting with you. Chapter 2 of Letting Go is one of my favorite LOA pieces, period. But chapter 1 of Letting Go is almost as good. And the beginning of chapter 1 of Letting Go, everybody watching this video, we might have to put this on YouTube because just at least part of this. Like, everyone watching this video should read the first 2 chapters of Letting Go by David Hawkins. Okay? Like, Marvin and I can pick apart most of these teachers. Nobody's perfect. There's plenty of flaws with what Hawkins says, etc. The first 2 chapters of Letting Go are 2 of the most practical chapters I've ever read, not just in LOA, but in any type of self-improvement or spiritual literature. And the first chapter, Hawkins basically says, you wake up and you're like, what the hell is wrong with me? Why is nothing working? Why is it so everything I try doesn't seem to actually work and I'm still not happy? And then he gives a list of literally like 60 or 70 things that like you might try that he himself tried because he tried everything, but none of them seem to work. And that would include something like SATs, by the way, self-hypnosis or whatever. And he says, you know what does work? Allowing yourself to be yourself. And then the second chapter is about how you do that. And like, you know, we could debate about calibration and the map and all this other stuff, but holy shit, is there a lot of common sense in those first two chapters about allowing yourself to feel and be yourself and not judge yourself for that.
And this is what most people don't want to do. And this is why most people, in my opinion, go to the robotic affirming, is because they're avoidant. The robotic affirming tells you can avoid doing this inner work.
Exactly.
And that's why people go to those coaches that say, all you gotta do is a robotic affirm. All you gotta do is SATs. And Tim has said this before in past videos. In fact, Tim and I, we spoke with someone before earlier, and they were talking about, yeah, I SATs worked for me 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, but it hasn't worked since. This is exactly why. You know what I mean? Because again, SATs help you get what you want at that time period, but it didn't help you keep it.
Made things worse long term in a way, maybe, you know?
Exactly. And so again, go ahead, Tim. Go ahead.
No, just a quick caveat because I want you to continue with that point. But like robotic affirming, by the way, will work well for some serious stuff if you face your resistance while you're doing it and admit that you have to let go while you're robotic affirming. But people don't want to do that. Continue on, Mark. Sorry.
No, I agree that again, even in robotic affirming, there is a level of avoidance. And you can actually confront stuff while you robotic affirm. And
exactly,
the people that robotic affirming works for a lot of times, in my opinion, are the people, just like, I mean, you've heard people say in the past, like I've heard people say, you know, Sammy, she's the big one, but Sammy won't even work with people that have super bad issues, I heard. You know what I mean? And that's why, because it takes a lot. It takes a lot of work to get somebody to, it's more than just affirming at that point. You know what I mean? And so if you really want to get something, you want to keep it, to me, this step is for most people, you just can't avoid it. And it's funny because this is the whole point of this video, is talking about why people are avoided.
Right. We haven't even gotten into why they get back into a relationship yet. So let's do that. And then, yeah, we'll talk more about other stuff too about it. So these are traits of avoidance when they want to rekindle a relationship. Now, keep in mind, like the vast majority of people talking about manifesting an SP, because normal motherfuckers don't use language like that, by the way. Okay. But like, if you are, and if you're in this crazy community, I want to, you know, manifest my SP back. It's going to sound a lot like this a lot of the time, guys. This is the kind of language. Indirect signals. They might test the waters by sending casual or ambiguous messages instead of directly expressing their desire to reconnect. Oof. 10 times out of fucking 10. This is why we always talk. Be direct, be clear. I've been on Reddit too much recently, gotten too many direct messages. People have their heads in the sand. Do not be ambiguous. Be clear as F. And then ask, was I not clear enough? How can I clarify that more? I love you. I love you. Be like, oh, no contact. Oh, you want me to contact them? Insanity. Another indirect signal. They may use humor or nostalgia to reconnect without appearing vulnerable. It's great to use humor or nostalgia if you're willing to be vulnerable, guys, but people use it to glaze over. They're like, oh yeah, remember we did this? It's like, yeah, well, don't you want to talk about all the tough shit that happened after that? And they won't do that. They like pretend it's not there. That's some weak shit. Gradual reconnection is often used. Avoidance may reestablish contact slowly, showing interest in small ways rather than making bold moves. They prefer situations where they don't feel pressured to commit right away. Emphasis on change. They may highlight how they've, quote unquote, worked on themselves or how circumstances have changed to justify revisiting the relationship. Again, notice how a lot of this avoidance stuff is about me, not the other person. It's about me. Oh, I've changed. I don't care about you. I've changed. Now I'm ready. Fuck that. That's not how a good relationship works. It's like, what do you need? How can I serve you? I'm listening. When wanting to rekindle a relationship, Fear of rejection. This is a trait. Despite their outward independence, they may hesitate to initiate reconciliation due to fear of rejection, especially if the breakup was initiated by them. And finally, reluctance to address issues. They might avoid discussing the core problems that led to the breakup, preferring to start fresh without delving into past conflicts. Bad idea. Because if you don't examine it, it's probably going to happen again. Now, again, normal disclaimer, we all have these avoidant qualities in some ways, okay? And they're not necessarily bad things. But in the SP community and the law of attraction community in general, there's so many extreme examples where it's unhealthy. And that's what we're trying to cover here. Really quickly, before we talk a little bit more about it, underlying dynamics, push-pull cycle. Avoidance often facilitate between wanting closeness and fearing it. This can manifest as seeking to rekindle a relationship, but withdrawing again once it becomes emotionally intense. Fear of vulnerability, as we already talked about, their attempts to reconnect are often cautious because expressing genuine emotions can feel threatening to them. Avoidance of responsibility, they might not take full accountability for the breakup, framing it as circumstantial rather than addressing personal patterns or, let me add, core issues. Understanding these traits can help you navigate interactions with an avoidant partner, whether you're dealing with a breakup or considering reconciliation. Marv, any thoughts there? And then we'll open the floor.
Well, I would say that it just shows, reading this stuff, reading what you just read, part of it, it just reminds me of how selfish people actually are.
Yeah, exactly.
When approaching this stuff, people disguise it as if they are not selfish.
Right, they're bypassing, blatant spiritual bypassing.
Yeah, man. And so, like I said, it just made me realize as you're
Totally.
reading it,
This is a bitter video, bitter medicine video.
people are super selfish and you know, it's funny. I can't even blame them in a sense because a lot of people don't even realize they're doing it. They need their eyes open, and that's where coaching comes in. That's where having friends and a support system that are not yes men or yes women, because a lot of people keep yes men, yes women around them, and people that agree with them all the time. And I think that's one of the worst things. You know, we had a client in our group, in our mastermind, that had that happen. You know, we've talked to multiple people that have had that happen. Their friends are just giving them the worst advice and kind of encouraging and egging on to do certain things. And it's not conducive to growth. And you never grow that way when you have people telling you what you want to hear instead of what you need to hear.
Yeah,
And yeah.
No, I was sorry. I was going to add on, like, you know, we're going over that Murphy chapter, and he's got a great section. I was looking ahead where he basically says exactly that, and we always talk about that too. Like, you want to get professional counsel and professional accountability. You know, it's just crazy when people listen to.
Yeah, because you just don't realize the selfishness. You don't realize how selfish you are, because most people go into LOA, in my opinion, thinking about me, thinking about my feelings, thinking about what I want. To the earlier point you made when you were going over that list just now, they think it's all about me. I'm the only person in this relationship. Nobody else has feelings but me. Oh, what did it say? I've done the work on myself. When you were reading it, I've done the work. Now I'm ready. Well, what about your other partner, your person? Maybe they're not ready. Maybe they need to know how you can help them as well. You know, how they can help themselves and all of the above. And so, yeah, like I said, it's just there's a lot of underlying selfishness that people really don't see with themselves when it comes to doing this work that needs to be pointed out for sure.
Yeah, and it's I think encouraged in the community. Honestly, I mean, that's why I say it's so much bypassing, because it's like, oh, we're using Neville's language or Abraham Hicks's language and all this spiritual language to cover up this shit. They're using Neville or Abraham Hicks's language to excuse their behavior of doing this kind of stuff.
But you know what's funny, Tim? They never use that to talk about the bad shit. I say that in one of our past videos. It's something I noticed when I watch some of those podcasts and stuff, and they talk about dating relationships, and you know, people always bring up Bible verses when it benefits them. Like I had referenced to women to say, "Oh, he who finds a wife finds a good thing." That's in the Bible. You know what I'm saying? But there's also other verses in the Bible that tell women you must submit to your husbands, and they don't want to hear that shit. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? They just want to hear the good shit. Like, yeah, okay, look, it says this, it says that. But and that's exactly how the LOA community is. The LOA community is the same way. Is you want to hear, you want to try to take Neville's words and apply it to when it benefits you. But Neville also has a bunch of passages that won't benefit you in a sense when you read it. He has a bunch of SP advice that you probably don't want to hear that's
Yeah.
not talked about. You know what I mean? Joseph Murphy has SP advice. Florence Scovel Shinn especially has SP advice that people don't want to hear when she says this or somebody it's equivalent, this or somebody better. You know what I mean? So don't, my whole thing is don't listen to this advice when it benefits you. Don't try to take their words and say, look, Neville said this, because I guarantee you I can pull up verses where Neville said something that you're not going to agree with. And the reason you're not going to agree with it is because you're selfish and you're biased and you're dogmatic in your thinking, point blank, period.